Live from New York City, it's the Gary Null Show. And now, your host, Gary Null.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gary Null. Nice to have you with us today. Our program is going to open a little different today. It's going to be a classroom on the air. Why? Because I believe that it is time to share some really important insights that I was finally given the opportunity to see when the final statistics to the 5 separate anti-aging studies that I've conducted over the last 3 years with members of this audience were analyzed. And this was done at a university, major university, and their anti-aging foundation. And that was a very important phone call. The actual written report will arrive any day now. But the subjective and objective information I can share with you, and why this is so important and why it can help you as of today. I've done over 55 clinical studies with human beings. I've done over 100 health support groups, one on arthritis, one on, let's say, can we improve the conditions of a woman going through perimenopause or menopause or postmenopause, with men who are suffering from andropause and losing weight. So all these different topics I've taken on with thousands of people, sometimes 1,000 or more per study. And so I have a pretty good idea of what works, what's a general overall health promoting protocol to live by. But then you have the ringer, you have the problem. Well, okay, so I know now what I should eat and how I should exercise, but I've already got problems. Gary, I've got high blood pressure, or I've got elevated cholesterol, or I've got a blocked carotid artery, I've got dementia, etc. So I don't give 2 protocols simultaneously. I give 1 protocol, but then if you have special conditions, you have to emphasize the importance of rebuilding the system that has collapsed, and that's why you end up with cancer or heart disease or obesity. And in that, I use the same identical protocol for all 5 studies. But then there is a twist. In the last study, we had the advantage for the first time of having a major university, and they have the technology, they own the patent, on a methylating DNA test. It's very technical, but I'll give you the lay language version. They can take your blood before and after your study, in this case 3 months, and determine how old you are, actual biological age, not your chronological age, that's your birth date. Let's say you're 60, but how old are you at your cellular level? Well, this would surprise you, because up till this point, we could not, with any affirmative material, say that if you follow this protocol, you can reverse your aging process by this amount. Or on the other side of it, which is a little scary, they can actually tell you how long you're going to live. Yeah, I don't think any of the participants want to know that. No, don't tell me that, Gary. Tell me the good news. But here's what I found out. Almost all scientific peer-reviewed studies look for objective criteria, not subjective. So let's just say that you want to know, are you reducing your risk of heart disease and stroke? And there are markers in the blood that determine that. For example, if you have an elevated homocysteine, C-reactive protein, fibrinogen, or triglyceride level, any one of those, if it's elevated, can increase your risk by 100, 200, 300% of having a heart attack or stroke. And these are silent killers. You can't feel them. There's no symptoms. When people entered the study, almost all studies exclude people who have any pre-medical condition, because that condition, if you had cancer, if you had high blood pressure, that can skew the results and make it look unfavorable. So let's just say you have 10 people in a study. 5 of those people get great results, and 5 of them don't get any results. Then you have a zero-sum gain study. It won't get published because you have proved nothing. But if you exclude those people who have comorbidities, and you have 5 people or 10 people who all got good results, that's a good study because you've got objective data, and they're looking for the objective data. But this study shows something else. In effect, I'm hopeful to write some articles for the scientific literature, and especially the psychological literature, showing that we have to reformulate a brand new approach. Why? Because what we found, and it's supported by multiple studies in the psychological literature, that once you start getting at a certain age, generally it's about 40, your desire to change is limited. Your ability to change, even more so. And once you get above 60 or 70, there's very little opportunity to change. Even if you want to, even if you need to change to improve or save your life. We also found that to be the case. More people who started the study after being thoroughly screened and showing they had a great desire and they were going to be disciplined, dropped out. A tremendous number dropped out. Why? Well, because they lacked motivation. It was too uncomfortable. They wanted the benefits of change, but they didn't want to change themselves. They were in their comfort zone. And earlier life conditions like loneliness. Look, a lot of people, even younger people, are lonely today, partly because of how we communicate, the lack of one-on-one communication face-to-face. Everybody's your friend over the internet, but they're not, and we know that. How do most young people communicate today? Over the internet. Do they feel that that's authentic? Are these their real friends? No. No, but when I was growing up, you knew who your friends were. You grew up with them. You knew if you could trust them or not. And you knew that at a certain point when you went from being kids to being in first grade, and then when you were going into junior high or high school, and then going into college, you knew which of those were going to be left behind because they were friends at that point in your life. They weren't necessarily going to be friends going forward. We also know about the friendships we have at work. And for some people, the office friendship, the factory friendship, the people you're looking at every day, they know you, they know a lot about you. Those tend to stay as long as you're working. Once you're no longer at that job, they too, the majority of them, dissipate. And it's also true even for neighbors. Think of it this way. Think of all the tens of millions of Americans who are financially challenged. Think of the over 27 million in 2008 alone lost their homes. As a result, where did they go? It was called couch surfing. They had to live in a neighbor or friends or family member's garage, or they reconverted an attic and put an air conditioning in it. They did all this kind of adjustments that they could so that a family member had a place to stay. What did our government do? Nothing, right? What about the neighbors across the street? And this is what really intrigued me, because this is a question nobody was asking. So I went around the country for a documentary I was doing called Poverty, Inc. And I asked hundreds and hundreds of people, how well do you know your neighbor across the street? Oh, very, very great. Last 23 years, they've been living there. Our kids camp together. We've gone on vacations together. But when they got the notice that they were being foreclosed on, did you come over and say, how can I help you? No. And when the day came, when the marshals came and said, you've got 1 hour to get all your belongings out, everything else, we're going to padlock it, and it stays. No. No, we didn't have any marches or demonstrations in America to stop home foreclosures, which we could have stopped with an executive order from the president. Didn't happen. The banks were bailed out. Everybody else was bailed out, but not the average citizen. Isn't that ironic? You would think, then how in the world can I trust any public official that claims that they're supporting me, and then when I really need support and I need help, or I'm going to be homeless with my kids, no food, possibly no job, or a job, but not enough to live anywhere. No one came to our aid. Not the liberals, not the conservatives, not the libertarians, no one. And now we had a real shock. Do you not think that that scars a person? It sure does. Do you think it keeps them from trusting people? And so I asked the people who still were in their homes, and one of them, this was a good example. One of them said, well, I remember the day that they came and we knew that they were being foreclosed on. We'd had that conversation. And I was looking with my wife through the blinds as they were out on their front lawn. The kids were crying. The wife was yelling, we can't get everything out in an hour. And the deputy says, not my fault. You got to get out what you can. And they didn't even know what to get out. And we thought, well, their clothes, their personal belongings, things they will need, get them out. But we didn't go out. And at one moment, the husband looked across and saw me looking back at him. And I felt ashamed of myself. On that day, I was a coward. Well, that's a true story. Now, how does that have to deal with my study and the subjective improvements? Because I realized about 3 days into the study that giving a lecture every day on health or aging, the telomeres, or intermittent fasting, or calorie counting, or the importance of meditation and stress management, in and of itself, that was not going to change anything. I had to help them deal with these very important life issues that are considered subjective and hence not important in a study. Oh, all of science is wrong. All of medicine is wrong. All of the media is wrong. Completely wrong. 100% wrong. Because I showed it. And see if this makes sense to you. Everyone had a list of things. Are you lonely? Are you depressed? Are you anxious? How are your communication skills? What kind of friendships do you have at work, at home, with others? Are they supportive? How do you feel about your life at this moment? What are you living for at this moment in your life? Because a lot of people are retired. Are you happy about each day, waking up and looking at the day in a positive way? Do you have pain? Do you have fatigue? Do you have high blood pressure? Do you have elevated blood sugar? Is your memory going? Are you overeating? And if so, why? We had all these questions that are considered subjective. And then I suddenly had to radically change everything. I met with the staff. We had 23 staff, some of the finest minds in America. We were using Dr. Peter Resnick's psychological evaluation of how to help a person with depression and anxiety. Mitchell Raven was overseeing the stress management section. John Q and Cecilia overseeing the exercise physiology. Luann on the personal counseling. We had someone overseeing the juicing to make sure they did it, the supplementation. And all my lectures from then on, 26 lectures in a week. I was supposed to do 5. I did 26. Why? Because I saw that they had not dealt with these underlying conditions they were bringing into the study. And if you don't deal with what a person's bringing into a study, it will absolutely adversely affect the outcome of the study. So once I started dealing, then I would deal with loneliness. I would deal with the meaning and purpose of a person's life. I would deal with anger and taming the beast within. I would deal with friendships. And here was this giant, vacuous amount of, well, the big empty, I call it. A life that was productive, a life that a person mastered what they were supposed to do in their career, good parents, etc. But there was an emptiness where they had not taken care of their essential needs. That's the key. Their essential responsibilities to themselves was missing. They were responsible for everybody else, but not themselves. And a lot of times, with 2 people in particular, they felt abused because they had been responsible for everyone else, but not themselves. But nobody that they were responsible for seemed to care. They took it for granted. And one of the women said, do you know what it's like to spend half your day being responsible for someone who doesn't even say thank you, or even is aware that what you're doing for them, they should have been doing for themselves? And especially for younger people, when I mentioned about a kid that had come back from college, couldn't find a job. in the area that they had graduated, but it was in liberal arts courses. And when the mother suggested that maybe that person go back to a school and learn woodworking, electric, plumbing, something that there were a lot of jobs for, didn't want to. And they were part of that woke generation that they just felt they could hang out in their bedroom again, watch a computer, whatever they're watching all day, and the mother could go to work. And she was a single parent. And she said, I had so much guilt and shame about telling him that you're lazy, you're inconsiderate, leave. So I held that anger inside. I held it in. And then I made inappropriate choices based upon my anger. Okay. You don't think that's important? You don't think? Think of this for a moment. I'm asking you to think of this. You do not think that not having respect and love and close friends as a support system, that's not important in how you deal with life and your own issues? It sure is. So what I did was this. I shifted everything so that everyone had a chance to deal with their issues. Also, a lot of us like go to a movie. All right. You see a good movie, you feel good about it. But how long is that movie? Let's say it's 2 hours long, sometimes 3 hours. I found that when I asked people to watch a film, a self-empowerment film, and then we would discuss it, 90% of what they watched, they couldn't remember. Because the older you get, the less retention you have, the less cognition you have, less memory you have to use. So I broke it up into 15-minute segments. Watch a film for 15 minutes, I should say 15 minutes, and then think about it. Write down what message you should learn from that. And if the lecture was good, you should have 5 issues per every 15 minutes. But then take the next 15 minutes to 20 minutes and talk it out. Here's what I learned. Here's how that impacts me. Here's how that gives me a new insight into my problems. Well, lo and behold, now it might take 2 hours to watch a film, but wow, they were gaining insights that they could then see how they could use. They were talking it out. That's another lesson. Talk out the issues about what you've learned that helps you overcome the dark side to the light side, from being negative to positive, from being fatalistic to optimistic, from being revengeful to forgiving. In that time period, you're talking it out. In effect, you're having an argument with yourself. You're having the duality of the light side, dark side. Because if you don't do it, more often than not, the dark side will manifest. Just look at the mess we're in today at every level of our society. So anyhow, suddenly people began to become much more involved in their own healing process. Write it out, journal it, be with nature in quiet, silent time. Have a conversation in silence with yourself. What is the solution you need? What is the solution that you want? What is the solution you're going to allow yourself to work on? As a result of changing from just the objective, let's see if we can't lower your blood pressure and lower your weight, to the subjective, let's see if we can't resolve a lot of our life issues that we brought in here that we haven't resolved. They're just hiding someplace. We were able to have phenomenal results. And when I say phenomenal, when you see the article, not the peer-reviewed scientific article, but when you see the lay article that we're writing from the article, you'll think, how is that even possible? Because then people actually look forward to gaining acceptance. People would stop me all day long on campus and say, Gary, guess what? You know, I did and I didn't understand what I was doing and acting out, why I was angry at everyone when I was earlier and a kid and fighting. Now I do. I was thinking about the lecture. It took me 3 hours to watch the lecture, which is an hour long, because I kept walking and reflecting. Is that me? Is it not me? It was anger taming the beast within, and the person got it. And now they say it was like lancing an abscess. Everything toxic spilled out, and the light came in, and the sunlight is the great healer. And he said, now I have insights. This is why I was resistant and fighting. This is a guy 74 years old. He'd been doing this since he was 5. So imagine that. So guess what? Once we healed the wounds of life, where the person was the architect of that. We were merely providing with tools. Now, guess what happens? Then they stick with the protocol. So when they went home, they stuck with the protocol. And the results show it. And all the scientists who were on the call last week said they had never seen anything like this. This is opening a whole new door. I want to share that with you because now I have a whole section within the objective scientific changes showing that we would not have had any of those objective scientific changes if we first didn't deal with the subjective part of life that people tend to overlook. How you doing? Okay. You sure? I don't know how to answer that. If I say, yeah, I'm sure, I'm giving a bravado, a confidence, making you feel that somehow I got my life in order. If I'm honest, no, there's a whole lot wrong with my life, but I don't want to burden you with that. I see. It's time that we were honest about what's not right in our life and how we can turn it around. And we can turn it around. So we have spectacular results, never before seen in any study that we have been able to review. And that was part of what you have to do. You have to review all the other literature and show how you're similar or not similar. And the fact that we got 5 out of 5 replications with positive results proves this. But now going forward, I will have a completely different protocol now that I've learned this, because there were so many people who dropped out because the subjective issues of their life, loneliness, depression, fear, anxiety, uncertainty, insecurity, had not been resolved. So yeah, when you're in a campus where you have 13 supervisors, making sure you drink your juices, 12 of them, you take all your vitamins with everyone else, you're at the yoga, the meditation, the qigong, the tai chi, the water aerobics, the resistance exercises, you're doing the power walking. But now you're at home and you have no one supervising you. And you think, I can't do this. Well, you just did it. I know, but that was like going to a boot camp. I had to. So isn't it time that we changed our mindset of how we deal with life? That's our classroom on the air today. Thank you for watching. And remember, go to PRN.Live, PRN.Live, and you can see a whole bunch of good information coming from some of the most progressive, humanistic, spiritual, and really insightful minds in the world. Go to GaryNall.com, see all the articles, films, etc. Have a nice day.
If you would like to stay updated and see more content, you can follow PRN on Twitter at live.prn and YouTube at Progressive Radio Network. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you again for listening to PRN, the home of progressive voices.